Hello everybody, welcome to my talk. My name is Peter McKee. I'm on the developer relations team here at Docker, and today I'm going to be talking about how to build and test your Docker images in the cloud. So let's take a look at the agenda. So we'll start things off by talking about continuous integration. What exactly is continuous integration? And then we'll take a look at Docker Hub and the way it does CI. We'll start out by integrating GitHub into Hub. And then we'll take a look at setting up simple auto builds and auto tests. And then we'll go a little deeper into that, and we'll do more advanced custom builds and custom tests running. And then after that, we'll finish up by taking a look how Docker Hub can fire off webhooks once your images are pushed into a repo. And that way you can integrate with third-party products. So what exactly is continuous integration? So continuous integration is where developers merge their changes into a common code repository whenever a feature is completed or a change is made. Once these changes are merged, the CI system can then run automated builds and tests to verify the changes. This is often done multiple times throughout the day. So the way this kind of works is the developers working local on their machine, they create a feature branch to either add a feature or fix a defect. And then once they're done and run their test local, then they push up to a remote branch, usually cut a PR, and then once that PR is signed off on, that gets merged into a master branch. And then Docker Hub is listening to the merges into master branch, and a webhook is fired and sent to Hub. Hub listens to that webhook, and then it will then check out that branch. It will find your Docker file. It will run your build your image. Once that is passed, then it'll run your tests if you have them set up. Once all your tests have passed, then it'll push your image into the repo. So that flow is what we're going to be looking at today. Okay, so we're going to spend a lot of time in Hub. If you don't have a Hub account, please go sign up. It's free. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is how to set up GitHub. So let's go into Hub. So I come over here in the browser and I go to hub.docker.com. Then I'm going to click sign in. If you don't have an account, you can go ahead and create one. Your Docker ID is an account, and it's free. So let me sign in. I have my Docker ID and my password. Once I'm signed in, you can go up to this menu in the top right, drop this down, and then go to account settings. Over here in the linked accounts, we have two source code repositories that we can connect to, GitHub and Bitbucket. We're going to connect into GitHub. So I'm going to click the connect. It's requesting that I sign in. So enter my username and password, sign in. I'll probably get a 2FA here. Yep. And so 285.620, 285.620. All right, now I can turn off my messages. Okay. So now we're back here in Hub. And I just connected GitHub in there, but now we want to create a repository. So go to repositories. And we can see I have P McKee, and these are the repositories I have in my current organization underneath my personal name. So I'm going to create a repository. I go ahead and I'm going to call it Hello World. And I'm not going to put a description in there. I'm going to leave it public. And then we can either connect here or we can do it later, but let's connect now. So I'm going to click that button. I'm going to drop down the organization. My GitHub is in Ronin JS, so I'm going to select the Docker Hello World. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that. Okay, so now I have a repository, image repository set up in Hub. And if we take a look, I don't have any images yet. I haven't pushed any images. So we're in the general. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's push an image. So let's go back to, let's first take a look at the application real quick. So my little Docker Hello World is a very simple Node.js application. Here's the source. I have a server. It's going to be listening on port 8080. I have a couple, actually I have one route in here. It's just listening into the root, and it will return back hello DockerCon. Underneath the util directory, I have a little helper function here that'll add two numbers together and return the sum. And then I have a little test that will test that. Okay, so let's go down here. Let's take a look at our Docker file real quick. So I have a very basic Docker file here. I'm just using Node as a base image. I set up my working directory. I configure an environment variable named port and set it to 80. I copy the package JSON into the image. I run npm install. I take the source code, copy that in the code, and then I tell it the command I want the Docker to run is node and pass in server.js. So let's go ahead and build our image. So I'm going to call it Docker build. I'm going to give it a tag. Now the tag I need to give it is the same repo that I just set up, hello world, and I'm going to give it the current directory that we're in. And so if you see here, we named my repo as pMcKee hello world, right? So pMcKee hello world. I hit enter, and there we go. The image is built. So if I do a Docker images, we can see that it's built. So now what we want to do is let's push this image up into Hub. So I'm going to do a Docker login. Okay, Docker push, and I'm just going to go pMcKee hello world. And there we go. It's going to push it up into Hub. Hopefully my internet is be nice and fast today. And wait for it. Pushed and done. Okay, there we go. So if we come back in here in the Hub, let me refresh. So we can see right down here we have latest, just pushed a few seconds ago. And then if we go into tags, we can see that latest has been pushed. Okay, that's great. So let's take a look at our builds now. Click on builds, and then we'll come over here to the configure automated builds. Click on that. And then we're going to come down here to the bottom. So you can see, well, actually at the top here, you can see the source repositories Ronin.js, docker-hello-world. Build location, we're going to use Docker's infrastructure. We're going to keep auto tests off for now. I'll talk about this in a minute, but these aren't very important for right now. And then we're going to keep repository links turned off. And then what we need to set up is a build rule. So we'll come over here and we'll click on the build rule. And you see we have a couple options here. So we can listen to this either a branch or a tag. So we're going to listen to the branch. We're going to listen to the master branch. And then after our image is built, we're going to tag it as latest. And then we tell the Hub build system where to find the Docker file to build. So the build context is where Docker will use to what context it will build in. So we give it the root because that's the root, and the name of our Docker file is Dockerfile. And we'll keep on auto builds and build caching. So there we go. And now let's go ahead and save that. Now let's go over to our source code. Let's make a change. So we'll come over here into our route, and let's change this from DockerCon to hello world. So I'm going to save that, come into my terminal, and we can see we have a change there by the yellow. So I'm going to commit that change. So changes. And then I'm going to go ahead and push this up to the repo. Now before, you would have to do, if you made some changes, you might run your Docker image local, another Docker build, and then push that image up. So now this happens right in our workflow. So we're going to push our changes up to the repository, and then we're going to watch our build kickoff. So let's go ahead and push that up there. Okay, let's go back into Hub, and let's go back into our builds. And now we can see that we have a build running right here. Our build is finished. So we can see recent builds, build and master. It was successful. Down here at the bottom, you have build logs, you have Dockerfile, and your README. Let's go ahead and take a look at the logs. We can come down here and we can see the latest SHA. It's been pushed. So awesome. Happened about 15 minutes ago. Let's see. Let's go back. So what I want to do now, so we made a change to our code, and then we didn't build our image locally. All we had to do was do a get push, and we pushed our changes up, and Docker picked that up and built our image for us. So cool. So let's add in tests now. So the way you add into tests into your CI pipeline in Hub is you create this docker compose.test.yml for YAML. Now in this file, you have to have services and you have to have SUT. So system under test is what it stands for. And then in here, you can do anything you like to do a custom build. So all we're doing is setting the context and then telling it what Docker file to use. I'm using this Dockerfile -test, which is here, which is a little bit richer Docker file than we were using before. I just wanted to be able to show the difference that you can use different Docker files. But it's basically the same. We set up the node environment variables, and I set that to test. So this is a build argument, so you can pass in build arguments to do builds with Docker. So we set up a build argument, we default it to test, then we set up the node environment. Pretty much the same. We also allow this to be able to override the port argument with another build argument. And then we copy in our package JSON unlock, npm stall, same thing. And so then let's go back to our test YAML here. And then when you can see, you can give it a command. So we say npm run tests, right? So if you're not familiar with Node and npm, in our package JSON, you can set up scripts. So we have a script in here that's Jest. Jest is our test runner. And so Jest will run, and we'll run our tests. Okay, so let's make another change. Let's change this back to DockerCon. So let me save that. And I'll come over here. And now, real quick, so over in Hub, we don't need to do anything on our builds. The only thing you need to do to set up auto tests is to create that test YAML file. You just need to create this docker-compose.test YAML. Okay. So I'm going to do a commit. So git commit, and I'm going to say changes. Okay, cool. So let's push this up. Okay, we push that. And then we'll come back here in the builds. Let me refresh real quick. And we should see we have another build kicking off. So our build was successful. So let's take a look at the logs here. Let me move this up a little bit more. Okay, let's go down through the logs. And we can see here that our image was built. This is our test image. You can see the _sut. And then right down here, you can see Jest was run, and our tests ran, and they all passed. And so since they passed, you can see here that our image was pushed. Pretty cool. All right. So we set up some simple builds, and we pushed to our Git repo, and we ran our builds, and then we set up custom tests. So we created a Docker compose-test file. And so right in here, so we set up our test file. We told it what Docker file to use, what command we wanted to run our tests. So that's basically how you set up some basic tests. It'll run your Docker file, and it'll also then run whatever command you want to give it to run tests. So what I want to look now is building some kind of tie into the CI process. So this is where the real power of Hub comes in. So there's some life cycle methods that happen when your images are being built and your tests are being run. And we can hook into those, and we call those hooks. So if you create a hooks folder in your repo, and then if you add these files into it, these files will get run during the life cycles. And you can override the build command. You can override the pre-build and the post-build. And then you can also override the pre-test, the post-test. And then you can also override pre-push and post-push. And so what we're going to look at is we're going to set up a custom build. And so let me pull up that file. So let me copy this file over here real quick. And so this is our custom build file. Let me select all this and copy this in. So basically your hooks are just bash files, shell scripts. And you have access to all these custom environment variables that Docker will pass in, will set up in the environment and run your bash script. So we have access to this Docker tag. You can pass in, also you can, and then you have a Docker file and then image name. But you can also set environment variables in Hub, custom environment variables. So let's go take a look at that real quick. So let's go back, look at builds, and let's configure a custom environment variable. So I'm going to scroll down here. Oh, oh, I'm sorry, you got to configure builds. So now I'll come down. So I'm going to click on a custom environment variable, and I'm going to set the port, and I want that port to be 8080. So if you remember in our Docker file, we set up an environment variable and we called it port 80, right? So we can add an arg here. We can call it port, and we can set this to default it to 80. And then down here in port, we want to set this to port. Okay, so let's save that, and I'll show you. If you remember in our test, you'll see the same thing here. Okay, so the argument port equals 80, environment variable port, and it sets it to the build argument. Okay, so that's what we did here. So save that. Over here in our custom build, now we can take a look at Docker says, so this, I'm triggering this build, and here's the Docker tag that was triggering this build. So if it's equal to latest, then we're going to echo out and say building image for port, and whatever port is in that environment variable. Then we're going to do a Docker build. We're going to give it a custom Docker build command. And we're going to tell it, pass in this build argument of port and set it to whatever's set in hub. And then send in the Docker file path and the image name. The Docker file path and image name come from these rules right here. Okay. So let's save that. And then let's come over here, and I'm going to commit those changes. I'm going to go get commit changes, and I'm going to push those. So that gets pushed up in the Git. Docker Hub is watching that, waiting for the webhook. And if we come back into our builds, we'll see that we have a build kicked off. Okay, our build is finished, and you can see that it was successful. So let's roll down here into the build logs a little bit. And I'm going to, I'm going to start at the top. So you can see here, this is just pre-build hook, pre-build tests. Okay, now we're executing our build hook, and the build image is going to use port 8080, right? So that's where our custom build is being triggered. If we go back here, and you see build image using port, and then it's going to dump out the port because we had pushed to latest, so it came into this then statement, and we should see port. And why port 8080? Because over here in our custom configuration of our auto builds, we set port to 8080. Okay, so we kind of took a look at how you can tie into custom build cycle in the build life cycle. So I want to show you, there's a whole bunch of things you can do, but if you go to Docker Advanced Auto Builds, and it doesn't matter, I didn't spell advanced right, it's going to be the first one. So if you come to this website, in our documentation is very good, but take a look down through this document, and you can see all the environment variables that are set up for you, how you need to structure, sorry for fast scrolling, how you need to structure your compose file, and all kinds of things. So you could do a lot of stuff with your custom hooks files. Even at the end, you could push into another repository, and I think it shows it down here. Yeah, so even if you need to do branching and special cloning, you need to push to multiple repos. You can do all kinds of stuff within these custom hook files. They're just shell scripts. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is webhooks. So we're going to use a little test site that's called webhook.site. And I've set up a webhook here already. And you can find the post URL right here. So I'm going to copy that. And then we'll go back to in the hub, and let's go into hooks. And then you can set up a webhook right here. So let's do Docker con webhooks, and then post the URL in there. Let's do create. And now we have our webhook here. Now, a webhook will be triggered anytime you push an image into your repository. So let's go back to our command line, and we can do Docker tag. Let's do pMcKee hello world, and we will tag the latest to pMcKee hello world. Let's do 2.2.2. So So I click that, and now I'm going to do a Docker push. And McKee 2.2.2, and we'll go ahead and push that. Okay, that was pushed. Now if we come back here and look at our tags, we can see that we have a 2.2.2 image. And then if we come over here to webhooks, let's take a look at these. We'll view the history here, and we can see we just did a push. And let's go check out here, and we can see we've gotten pushes that come into the webhook. We sent messages into the webhook, and here you can see the raw data. So this is an awesome way to connect into other servers or instances or clouds in your CI and then CD pipeline. So if you're looking to distribute your images to another repository, you can use webhooks. Or if you want to update canary services, those type of things, you can send a webhook after an image has been pushed. Okay, let's do a quick little review. So we started out taking a look at continuous integration and what that was. Then we took a look at the way Hub does continuous integration. We looked at how you create a repo and then how you connect that repo into GitHub. And then we took a look at how you can set up auto builds and auto tests, and we did that very simply and built in Hub. And then we took a look at how you can connect into that life cycle of the build and how you can do custom builds, custom pushes to different repos and those type of things. And then we kind of finished it out with webhooks. We took a look how you can set up a webhook on Hub and how that webhook gets fired once an image is pushed into the repository. That way you can connect in other CI/CD systems and the cloud. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. Make sure you check out all the other talks, and please stay safe out there.